Modern Horizons 2 had a very strong impact on Legacy, and it's left many people wondering, what's Modern Horizons 3 gonna do? In this video, you're gonna see 3 different decks of concepts that I think could impact Legacy in the near future if people can build the right deck. The first card I want to highlight is Necro Dominance. I think this is clearly the card in the format that could easily make turn 1 and turn 2 kills due to all the fast mana in Legacy. Necro Dominance skips your draw step, but at the beginning of your end step you can pay any amount of life, and if you do, draw that many cards, but there is a downside that you can only have 5 cards in hand. There's 2 ways to build with this card. A very nice mid-rangey deck using a load of discard spells and griefs, and then using the Necro Dominance to refill your hand on the end step. Or there's a combo deck that you can see my opponent using here. Turn 1 Dark Ritual into Necro Dominance, then on their end step draw 19 cards and use Simian Spirit Guides, Elvish Spirit Guides to get 4 mana, use Mana Morphos and other ways to fix your mana to cast Beseech the Mirror at instant speed, and then they can sacrifice the Necro Dominance to go get Tendrils of Agony. I need to see this opponent's list because they owned me and killed me on turn 1. This video is sponsored by TC's Magic Box. TC's Magic Box is a Magic YouTube channel dedicated to opening Magic the Gathering packs from secret layers and other collector booster boxes. You need to check them out, the videos are great vibes, they've sponsored this video, and they're the reason why I'm back this week to make 3 YouTube videos based on Modern Horizons 3. TC's Magic Box has multiple videos coming out this week opening Modern Horizons collector boosters, so if that suits you, go check out either the link in the description or the pinned comment. Now let's see how Necro Dominance does in Legacy. As we're going to be covering many decks today, let's just show the match where I managed to play Necro Dominance multiple times throughout. Here we've got a turn 1 Dark Ritual into Necro Dominance, and we get to draw 4 cards on our end step and pitch a few back. It's important that we play as many cards per turn because then we get to utilize Necro Dominance to its full effect. The opponent leads with a basic mountain and passes back. I also want to point out how annoying Necro Dominance is. I kept accidentally skipping my first main phase because Necro Dominance skips your draw step and my muscle memory always tries to click through the draw step. And because of this, I forget to evoke Grief to see what the opponent is doing. I get max punished for this because the opponent is on Mono Red Storm and they get down a Burgi and a new Ral. These 2 cards together generate so much mana, all they need is a couple draw spells and they can easily go through their whole deck as everything is so cheap. Of course though, I'm a luck sack, the opponent whiffs and cannot do anything on their turn to try and kill me. So wanting to disrupt them as much as possible, I grief the opponent and see they only have 3 lands in hand. Then I pass back the turn. Silly me forgot Dauthi Voidwalker cannot block. I have not played Magic in 4 months. The opponent is clearly mana flooded, they're just going to attack us for some damage, and we're going to be skipping our draw step, so we're just stuck with these cards in hand. Trying to put pressure on the opponent, I do use Dauthi Voidwalker, and I sacrifice the other Dauthi Voidwalker to draw 2 cards with Reckless Impulse, but we don't find anything off the top with that. So now I hardcast a Grief, and then draw more cards of Necro Dominance, putting myself down to 2 life. This is the one downside of using Necro Dominance in a mid-range deck. When you're low on life, you just have to draw cards of the Necro Dominance anyways because you just don't get your draw step. What is nice though is we found a card in the Great Creator and there is the One Ring in our sideboard, so there is a slim chance we can win this game. What's surprising too is the opponent only attacks with the Ral here, so I get to block with my Grief. And what's even nicer is we can use Lotus Petal as well as Dauthi Voidwalker getting Mana Morphos from the opponent's exile, casting it, making 2 mana, casting our Karn, and then casting the One Ring for the last 4 mana that we have. As we have protection from everything, the opponent can't attack us, so they send both of their creatures at Karn, and as I want Karn to survive, I block the Burgi. Honestly, here I was feeling pretty hopeless. We do get to cast a Troll, but the opponent just needs to find any spell off the top of the deck and then I'm basically dead. As well as there's nothing really I can get from the sideboard with Karn next turn to help, so I'm gonna have to start attacking with the One Ring to do anything. So I'm just dead here. Really awkward game. I'm sure there was a way to win, but I don't think I played that game anywhere near close to optimal. Now in game 2, we get to demonstrate the power of mulliganing and playing turn 1 Grief Evoke into Reanimate and absolutely shredding the opponent's hand. I have left them with 2 lands in hand and 2 Rite of Flame. Now we get to Thoughtseize the opponent and put our Lotus Petal on the battlefield and just start attacking him with this Grief. It's funny how just playing a Grief and reanimating it can just make people trip up, and when they rely on the top of the deck in Legacy, a lot of the time it just isn't going to be enough, especially in a combo deck. With pressure from Orcish Bowmaster and the Trawler being a very nice 3-mana creature alongside being a land, we get the opponent down too low, and we move on to the third game. To start off the third game, the opponent goes off casting draw spells and Red Medallion, but then we get to cast a Thoughtseize to take the Burning Wish out of their hand, leaving them empty-handed. Now, with a Dark Ritual and a Lotus Petal, we have to be really selective with what we do with our mana, because we can be easily mana screwed and get put out of this game. The opponent is limited on mana themselves as well as cards, so we do get a bit of time, and after finding this swamp off the top, now I think is the right time to play Karn the Great Creator, as we get to shut down this Lotus Petal, and then we have 2 swamps in play to be able to cast Orcish Bowmasters to at least produce a chump blocker to protect the Karn on later turns. With the opponent having 1 card in hand, I think it's important that we keep their hand as empty as long as possible so that they don't stack up cards to combo with. And now that we get to kill the Ral with the Orcish Bowmasters, we're going to keep using our Hymn to Torax and our discard spells every single turn to make sure they really don't have anything to play with. Now we get to put our opponent on the fastest 20-turn clock you're ever going to see, and we just win this game from here on out because the opponent doesn't find anything. And did you see the reason why I won this match? Well, the opponent's playing a combo deck, and they didn't combo. And this was the only match I won with this list. I think Necro Dominance does not suit this style of deck because of the life loss and the speed of the list. I could have definitely built this deck wrong, but I think it definitely suits a combo build way more. Being able to have a turn 1 kill consistently is way better than this turn 4, draw 4 cards, do some grief stuff. The combo build seems way better because you just need 1 land, 1 Dark Ritual, 1 Necro Dominance. That's really easy to find with the London Mulligan. I believe Psychic Frog is actually going to have some impact on Legacy because of its discard ability and how easily it slots into Blue-Black Reanimator. Being both blue and black, we can pitch this card to both Grief and Force of Will. Not only that, being able to play Grief is so insane because we get to reanimate it. So we can either be looking to reanimate an Atraxa on the early game, or getting that turn 1 Grief plus reanimate to completely lock the opponent out. Of course, we've got the classic Legacy cantrips to make sure our draws are consistent, and the Frog, when this attacks and starts connecting, is really hard for the opponents to deal with because we start to draw into our Force of Wills and more combo pieces to lock them out of the game. Let's look at a mirror match to see how powerful this deck is when we have the Frogs and the opponent doesn't have the Frog. Starting off game 1, we've got a Daze and a turn 1 Grief Reanimate. This is a snap keep, it's the nuts. When we Grief the opponent, we see that they have a Grief, Reanimate, and 2 Brainstorms. Reanimate is clearly too strong to let them keep in their hand, but I don't think the second Grief is that strong because they're going to lose 2 cards here. If they want to cast their Grief, they're going to have to discard another card, and it has to be a black card off the top of the deck. Easy, just take another Brainstorm. Let's stop them from fixing their draw. It's also important I fetch a basic Swamp here as they have 2 Wastelands in their hand. We're going to want to use this Grief to beat them down to win this game, and having access to 1 black mana is very important for the later turns so we can get the Frog down when we draw a blue source. Now, we do find a blue source off the top of the deck, but it's the tap Surveil land, so that's getting wastelanded instantly, and then the next top card was an Entomb. So we can attack for 3, and then on the opponent's end step, use that Entomb to then try and set up a Reanimate on our 5th turn. This Entomb is going to put Atraxa in our graveyard. I think it's important that we just find another Force of Will, but the opponent has a Force of Will to stop Atraxa hitting the battlefield, which I don't even think really matters here. The opponent can't deal with our Grief, and they're just going to die in 3 turns. They Grief us, take the Frog, and I find a Wasteland off the top, which I do Wasteland their Wasteland just in case they need colorless mana to cast a removal spell, but it really doesn't matter. Going into boarding, Force of Will isn't great in the mirror, but also most of our sideboard cards are great in the mirror. I think the only cards that we want here are Fatal Push and Dalthy Voidwalker, and we're just going to take out some Force of Wills as a 2-for-1 is not great. Going into game 2, we have an ideal opening hand again, as we have a Grief, Force of Will, and a Frog. And of course, like an absolute beast, I find Reanimate off the top of the deck, so now we can grief, pitching the Dauthi Voidwalker, and see they have a Daze, Bowmaster, Ponder, and Reanimate in hand. Now it's important to notice they don't have any black mana, so let's take away these 2 blue spells and hope they never draw a swamp. Well, a troll off the top cycling for a swamp and allowing them to reanimate it is a huge problem, so we're using Force of Will and making sure that troll does not hit the battlefield. Now we get to slam our frog and just start attacking with grief and the frog every turn, drawing loads of cards and putting a lot of pressure on. We know that they haven't got anything in their hand to deal with this, so this is definitely going to be hard for them to counter. In their turn, they use the Wasteland that they know about and play an Orcish Bowmasters at sorcery speed to ping us and create a 1/1. This is not a problem for us, as our frog can be pumped at instant speed by discarding cards from our hand. Now, I was worried that the opponent was just going to make a massive token and eventually kill us in one swing with the Orc, but they decide to trade with our grief and kill their own token. Using a Ponder, I find an Animate dead off the top of the deck, and we pass back the turn. The opponent starts off their turn with a Ponder, and I decide to Daze here. You might think I'm crazy because they have 2 untapped mana, but don't forget we know about a second Wasteland in their hand, and I just want to protect my blue source. Annoyingly, the opponent follows up with a Nihil Spellbomb to stop me from using Entomb and Animate Dead on my next turn. But we can hope the opponent will just sacrifice the Nihil Spellbomb down the line to get an extra card in hand. So on our turn, we get to Entomb on their end step, we use Entomb, put an Atraxa in the graveyard, and we get to attack it and draw another card. They do use Nihil Spellbomb to exile that from our graveyard and draw, but now we can Animate Dead from their graveyard. I want to quickly pause here and see the new Goyf. I think this is definitely a powerful creature that has potential in both Modern and Legacy, but I think it's crazy to say that I don't know if it's going to be a tier 1 1-drop because it doesn't draw any cards. Yes, that's what makes a 1-drop good nowadays. It has to draw cards. So yeah, I give this like a 6-7 out of 10. I think it's going to see a lot of play in tier 2, tier 3 decks. Now, I don't think you've noticed, but I'm casting an Animate Dead to reanimate that troll from the graveyard. The opponent's on 8 life, and now I can utilize the frog's second ability of exiling 3 cards from my graveyard to give it flying. So using this Scalding Tarn, we can get our Surveil land out of the deck, bin the top card, and then exile 3 cards from my graveyard to give this creature flying. The troll cannot be blocked next turn, so if the opponent can't find a removal spell off the top of their deck, they're dead. This list by far was my favorite Legacy deck to play from Modern Horizons 3, because you're not ready for the monstrosity of a list I'm about to play. This new Zombie Knight Reliquary can sacrifice another creature to search your library for a land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. This card completely went under my radar as Legacy playable, as of course you could use it in the Dark Depths combo to make it more consistent to find the Dark Depths, but I think it's just a bit slow. So this is where it goes into a Gaia's Cradle list. I was looking on MTG Goldfish for some Legacy decks that are playable with Modern Horizons 3 cards, and somehow this list went 5-0. I don't understand why this list went 5-0. I played a whole league with this list, and I don't understand how it went 5-0. I'm trash with green decks, so let's just watch me play a bit, and you can assess the power level of this deck on your own. Being on the draw, we've got a Once Upon a Time and a turn on Elvish Reclaimer, so I don't think I can say no to this hand, especially in the blind. The opponent starts off with the Polluted Delta and a cantrip. With the opponent passing back, we start off with Once Upon a Time and find another Elvish Reclaimer, so we can try to start putting the beatdown plan on. The opponent casts a Brainstorm in their turn and then uses a fetch land to cast a Fatal Push with the basic Swamp. With another Bayou off the top, we're going to get our Elvish Reclaimer down and play our Dryad Arbor, because if we don't, it will have Summoning Sickness next turn and we won't be able to cast this Grist. The opponent completely owns my soul as they cast another cantrip, a Mishra's Bauble, and then use 2 mana to cast an Orcish Bowmasters to ping my Dryad Arbor and make a 1/1. The actual pain I feel in my heart when they get to kill my creature essentially for free is disgusting. If you thought that was bad, things get even worse as I cast this Fiend Artisan in my hand, and of course they've got a Daze. Yeah, I think you can see where this game is going. They get a Murktide Regent down, and we just have no speed, no aggression. They've got counter spells, removal spells, Orcish Bowmaster. What could I have done this game? Only Richard Garfield knows. Let's summarize it up. On turn 5, I cast Natural Order, sacrificing my Elvish Reclaimer, and they have a Force of Will, so I can't win this game. Maybe if Atraxa got down, I would have been able to do something, but who knows. Now, the reason why I'm showcasing this deck is not because of this deck, it's because of this sideboard card, Vexing Bauble. I believe this card is going to have a big impact in Modern and Legacy. What have people been complaining about the most in Magic over the past few years? Spells are becoming free, super cheap, early in the game. Vexing Bauble sorts all of that, as well as it's a hate card that you can sacrifice to draw a card when the opponent has clearly used all of their free spells. It is so insane. I think this is really strong, and you're going to see why this is strong right now. Going into game 2, our opening hand is great because we have a turn 1 Noble Hierarch to start off our mana, and we have a Vexing Bauble alongside a Natural Order. Vexing Bauble is really powerful on the early turns against a blue control deck because they can't use Daze or Force of Will straight after that. The opponent plays a Mishra's Bauble and a basic island and pass back the turn. With another Natural Order off the top of the deck, we slam this Vexing Bauble and play our Fiend Artisan. The opponent plays a basic Swamp and Fatal pushes the Fiend Artisan, which is surprising because they knew about the Natural Order from the Mishra's Bauble. So now with a 4th land, we can play that, fetch a Bayou, and then play our Natural Order and win the game because they can't counter it? Now, I don't really think this is like busted Legacy gameplay, and Modern Horizons 3 hasn't really supported this because turn 3 Atraxa is really strong, but this is not a consistent game plan in this list. I mean, we're only playing 3 Natural Orders as well, so I don't even know if this is the main game plan of the list. White of the Reliquary here is going to be a decently sized Vigilance creature because we're going to slowly put creatures into our graveyard, and we can sacrifice Dryad Arbors and such and get a load of mana with Gaia's Cradle, but I really don't understand how this deck 5-0'd. I mean, I feel like it's just a bit slow and clunky and doesn't really interact with the opponent. We are playing 4 Endurance in the list, so we can interact with the opponents that play things in the graveyard, but I'm just not convinced. The opponent did Brazen Borrower, bouncing the Atraxa to hand, which is very annoying, but we can just rebuild the board using Green Sun Zenith and the Reliquary to put creatures on the table and start to try and attack the opponent. The opponent must have had a load of Mishra's Baubles in hand or something, because when they take a draw step, they just concede the game. Going into game 3, the opponent has a turn 1 Scalding Tarn and we have a turn 1 Noble Hierarch, but they quickly Fatal Push that and put it in the graveyard. This makes things awkward as we don't really have a nice turn 2 play, so we're going to go for White of the Reliquary. What is good about the Reliquary is it's not an X1, so it can't be Orcish Bowmastered, and we can block the Frog here to try and kill it, but don't forget, they can just discard cards here so that the Frog will kill my Reliquary. I think we're going to have to take this trade because if I just slowly take damage from the Frog and let them draw a load of cards, I'm just going to die because they're going to draw infinite removal spells and counters. So I'm just going to have to hope that we can eventually remove the Frog. I don't know. I actually just feel instantly dead, right? If this Frog just gains 1 power and toughness every turn by them discarding 1 card, I just lose. I can't kill it. So, yeah, and then they follow up with another Frog. And this is just already hopeless. The Frog seems insane. Do you not think that this blue-black deck is just nuts? You can play Control or Reanimator and the Frog is just insane. Play removal spells and counters and then the Frog just draws you a load of cards. It's a 2-mana Planeswalker that deals damage to the opponent. I don't know. Why are we playing green? Let's play the Frog. Like, it's too good. Overall, from these 3 cards and from the gameplay in the leagues that I played, the Psychic Frog is clearly the card to be playing with right now. I also want to say, don't forget when Modern Horizons 2 came out, all of the cards in the set went under the radar for a few months before it really broke things. Like Force of Vigor, it took a long time for people to realize it's insanely broken, so I wouldn't be surprised if there are cards in Modern Horizons 3 that are going to come out of their shell in a couple weeks' time and be really good in either Modern or Legacy. Vexing Bauble is not a card to sleep on. Not only is this really good in Legacy, it's also going to be a strong contender in Modern. countering Solitudes, Fury, Subtlety, Force of Negation, Force of Will, Daze, Summoner's Pact, Pact of Negation, you name it, this thing can stop it. Surgical Extraction, Gut Shot, Noxious Revival. Okay, I'll stop. This card is really good, and the fact that it's 1 mana and can be played on turn 1 is really strong, and on the later turns, when they clearly don't have those free spells in hand anymore because they've hard casted them, you can sacrifice it to draw a card. Insane. I think the deck with the biggest potential is Necro Dominance combo. Being able to use Dark Ritual turn 1 and cast Necro Dominance and then draw 19 cards on your end step to do something at instant speed is really strong. I think it's going to take some time to make a good build though, as you're going to have to make a way so that when you draw 19 cards, you're really going to consistently win, as you're going to have to find the combo pieces out of 60, so there's a lot of variance in that. And I also like the fact that you can mulligan down to 3 and then still instantly win. You just need 1 land, 1 Dark Ritual, and 1 Necro Dominance. The London Mulligan seems really broken with this style of strategy. Overall, it was really fun investigating Modern Horizons 3's impact on Legacy. But that's going to be it for this video. I want to thank TC's Magic Box for sponsoring this channel and making sure that I get 3 videos out this week. Don't forget to go check out TC's Magic Box, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time.